Disturbing true lake house horror stories. The lake house had been in my family for 3 generations, a weathered cedar structure perched on the shore of Lake Miro in northern Michigan. My grandfather built it in 1962, and it had always been our summer sanctuary, until the summer of 2019, when everything changed. I'm Claire, and I was 28 when I decided to spend a month at the lake house alone, working remotely and trying to finish my novel. My parents had stopped visiting years ago, though they'd never explained why. When I asked my mother about it, she'd simply said, "That place feels different now," and refused to elaborate. I arrived on a gray June afternoon, the sky heavy with clouds that turned the lake's surface into hammered pewter. The house looked smaller than I remembered, more isolated. The nearest neighbor was old Mr. Hendricks, almost a mile down the shore, and he rarely left his property. The first 2 days were perfect. I rowed in the mornings, swam in the afternoons, and spent my evenings on the deck watching the sun set over the water. But on the third night, I woke to the sound of someone moving downstairs. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps crossing the living room floor. My heart hammered as I grabbed my phone and crept to the bedroom door. The house was dark except for a faint glow coming from downstairs, like candlelight, flickering and warm. "Hello." My voice came out smaller than I'd intended. "Is someone there?" The footsteps stopped. The light went out. Silence pressing around me like water. I waited, barely breathing, for 10 full minutes before I found the courage to go downstairs. I checked every door, every window. All locked, nothing disturbed. I convinced myself I'd been dreaming and went back to bed. But the next morning, I found wet footprints leading from the back door, which was still locked, across the kitchen floor, and stopping at the basement door. The prints were small, child-size, and they glistened as if freshly made despite the floor being dry everywhere else. I took photos and posted them on social media, joking about my ghost roommate. My friend Michelle commented immediately, "Dude, you need to leave. That's not funny." But I stayed. I told myself there had to be a rational explanation. A leak in the ceiling. Perhaps condensation. Something. That night, I heard the sound again. Footsteps. But this time they were accompanied by something else. A child's voice, humming a tune I didn't recognize. The sound came from the basement. Every instinct screamed at me to stay upstairs, to lock myself in my room and call the police. But I'd grown up in this house. I'd played in that basement 1,000 times. Whatever was down there couldn't hurt me. That's what I told myself as I opened the basement door. The humming stopped the moment the door opened. Cold air rushed up from below, carried with it the smell of lake water and something else. Something rotten, organic, dead. "Hello?" I called down the stairs. My voice echoed in the darkness. No response. But I could hear breathing. Slow, wet breathing that reminded me of someone who'd been underwater too long. I flipped the light switch. Nothing happened. The bulb must have burned out. Using my phone's flashlight, I descended the stairs, each step creaking under my weight. The basement looked exactly as it always had. Storage boxes, old furniture, my grandfather's tools hanging on pegboards. But the air was wrong. Too cold, too thick, and the smell was stronger here. Overwhelming. That's when I saw her. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, stood in the corner by the old freezer. She wore a yellow sundress that looked decades out of style, and her hair hung in wet tangles around her face. She was staring at me with eyes that caught my flashlight beam and reflected it back like an animal's. "Oh my God," I whispered. "Sweetie, are you okay? How did you get in here?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, perfectly still, water dripping from her dress and pooling on the concrete floor. I took a step closer. "Are you lost? Where are your parents?" "I'm not lost," she said, her voice flat and emotionless. I live here. I've always lived here. No, honey, this is my family's house. Did you come in through under the water? She interrupted. That's where I am. That's where I'll always be. But sometimes I can come up. Sometimes I can walk around. The temperature in the basement dropped even further. My breath came out in visible clouds. I don't understand, I said, though part of me was beginning to. The girl tilted her head, studying me. Your grandfather knew. He saw me too. That's why he built the house here. To watch. To remember. He felt guilty. Guilty about what? She smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. About letting me drown. I stumbled backward, my mind reeling. That's not. My grandfather would never. July 17th, 1963, she said. I was swimming. The current took me. He was fishing from his boat. He saw me go under. He could have saved me, but he was scared. He was only 18. He didn't know what to do. So he watched. He watched until I stopped struggling. Then he went home and never told anyone. No, I whispered. You're lying. But even as I said it, I remembered things. My grandfather's strange behavior around the water. How he'd never swim, never go out in boats. How he'd sometimes stare at the lake with an expression of profound sadness. How he died of a heart attack while sitting on the deck, staring out the water, whispering something my grandmother could never quite make out. The girl took a step toward me. Water squelched in her shoes. He built this house right where he watched me die. Built it so he'd have to see the spot every day. He wanted to be punished. He wanted to remember. If this is true, I said, my voice shaking, then why are you here? Why now? My grandfather's been dead for 5 years. I've always been here, she said. But now you're alone. Now you can hear me. Now you can see me. And I want you to know the truth. I want someone to know what he did. She moved closer, and I could see her more clearly now. Her skin had a bluish tint. Her lips were purple. Her eyes were clouded and distant. What's your name? I asked. Rebecca Marsh. I was 7 years old. My parents searched for me for weeks. They never found my body. It's still down there in the deep part where the current is strong. I felt myself being pulled down, my lungs filling with water. I saw him in his boat, watching. I reached for him. He turned away. Tears were streaming down my face now. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring me back, Rebecca said. Sorry doesn't give me the life I should have had. I should be 41 now. I should have children. I should have lived. But your grandfather's fear took all of that from me. What do you want? I asked. Tell me what you want, and I'll do it. She considered this for a long moment. Tell them. Tell everyone what he did. Tell them Rebecca Marsh drowned in Lake Miro on July 17th, 1963, and someone watched it happen. Tell them so my parents can finally know. They're old now. They don't have much time left. They deserve to know I didn't just disappear. They deserve to know someone saw me that day. Your parents are still alive? My mother is. She's 82. She lives in Traverse City. She still keeps my room exactly as it was. She still celebrates my birthday every year. Tell her, please. I nodded, unable to speak. Rebecca smiled again, and this time it seemed almost peaceful. Thank you. Now I need you to leave this place. Sell it. Tear it down. Let the land return to the lake. This house was built on guilt, and guilt is a foundation that can only support ghosts. She turned and walked toward the far wall. As she moved, her form became translucent, see-through. When she reached the wall, she didn't stop. She passed through it as if it wasn't there, leaving only wet footprints behind. I ran upstairs, grabbed my laptop and phone, threw everything in my car, and left. I drove straight to the police station in the nearest town and told them everything. They were skeptical at first, but I insisted they check the records. They found it. A missing person report from July 1963. Rebecca and Marsh, age 7, last seen swimming near the north shore of Lake Miro. Case never solved. Body never recovered. They also found her mother, Grace Marsh, living in an assisted living facility in Traverse City. I visited her with a police officer present, and I told her everything. I told her about Rebecca's spirit, about my grandfather, about what really happened that day 60 years ago. Mrs. Marsh cried. She held my hand and cried for 20 minutes. Then she said something I'll never forget. I always knew she didn't just disappear. I always knew someone saw something. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for letting me know she's been trying to come home all these years. The police reopened the case. With modern sonar equipment, they found Rebecca's remains exactly where she'd said they'd be, in the deep part, caught in the rocks and silt for nearly 60 years. Mrs. Marsh was finally able to give her daughter a proper burial. I sold the lake house to a developer who tore it down. The land was returned to the state and made part of a nature preserve. Sometimes I drive past the spot where it stood, and there's nothing there now but trees and shoreline. The water is calm. The air is peaceful. But on July 17th each year, I visit Rebecca's grave. I bring yellow flowers. Her mother told me they were her favorite. And I tell her about the world she missed, about all the things that have changed, about how her story has helped her mother find peace. I learned something important that summer. Guilt is a powerful thing. It can build houses and trap souls. It can bind the living to the dead in ways we don't fully understand. My grandfather spent 40 years haunted by what he'd done, and in the end, it killed him. Rebecca spent 60 years trying to tell someone the truth. I'm just glad I was there to listen. I'm just glad I could help them both finally find peace. If you ever feel like a place is haunted, maybe it is, but maybe the ghosts aren't there to harm you. Maybe they're just waiting for someone to finally hear their story. Maybe they're just looking for someone brave enough to tell the truth. Rebecca Marsh deserved better than she got. But in the end, she got what she needed most. Someone who would listen. Someone who would remember. And someone who would make sure the world knew she had existed. She had mattered. And she had not been forgotten. The lake is quiet now. And so I hope is Rebecca.